when I took a closer look, they were mine. If I had been in America, I would have called John O'Brien. But I was in Tunisia, a Muslim country in Africa, and I sensed that something unusual was happening. The Tunisian artists who were waiting to attend my workshops had downloaded photographs from my website and made new versions of them for me as welcoming gifts. One of them, a lovely young woman, had taken one of my black and white drawings called The Embrace, with two people embracing, and turned it into a huge, colorful painting of two people embracing. And when I asked her what it was, she said it was her mother embracing her baby brother just before she died of cancer. I do not speak Arabic, and the Tunisian artist did not speak English. So we began our relationship by hugging each other. With the help of an interpreter, I began the workshop. And on the second day, a very imposing gentleman walked in with piercing eyes, whose name was Heshmi Gwashin. And he announced, "We are going to be doing a collaborative painting." And I said, "Oh, no, we're not. I've been collaborating in the theater for 23 years. I'm an artist, so I can do it all by myself." But there was something about Heshmi and the fact that I was there on a government grant that I did not want to cause an international incident. And he was, of course, the creator of Tunisian collaborative painting. So he told me the rules. Anybody can paint at any time. Anybody can paint over anybody else's work. If there's a dispute, one person is the arbiter and settles it. One artist begins the painting and says when it's finished, and there is no preconceived subject. And that's it up there, because the Tunisian artist recently gave me this painting, the first one we ever did together in Tunisia. So when I began the painting, I painted a face, which you can see, there's a face in the middle. That's all I did. And then another one of the artists, and it wasn't complete. And by the way, anybody can get up at any time. There's no, you can have 6 people painting at once on the canvas. So I was in the process of going to do something else, and then another artist, the painting was dripping off of the chin of the face I painted. So as it was dripping, one of the artists got up there and made it into a piece of string. And then another artist, Murad Jeraterai, he painted that hand, holding it. So 3 people, 3 artists were actually responsible for that painting before we hadn't gone anywhere. And then others joined in, sometimes together. So at some point we were all painting together. And there was all kinds of marvelous faces around and flowers. And a lot of it was painted over and just left that way, on purpose. So after 3 hours, I looked at the painting and I could not believe my eyes. It looked like the work of a single artist. I said, "It's finished." And I gave it the title of A Night in Tunisia, after the Dizzy Gillespie composition. And the painting got onto the front pages of the French and Muslim and Arabic newspapers, right next to the photo of Obama being elected. That's when this happened. And the ambassador of Godek, he said this is the best thing that ever happened to him and to our 2 countries as long as he was ambassador. I remember when I started the painting, I felt, because it was blank, I mean it's blank, big canvas, and I could feel the eyes, boring through my back, waiting to see what I was going to do. But that's what we did. And it's the beginning now. So, I collaborated on more paintings with the Tunisian artists, and they looked after me as if I were a long-lost relative. In the morning, one of them was always waiting in the lobby of my hotel to take me to breakfast and then to the Grua Cafe. And when we crossed the broad boulevards of Tunis, my female escort held on to me tightly and never let go as she guided me through the crowds. I was never out of her sight, and I ate my meals at the cafe with the artists, and then another artist escorted me back to my hotel in the evening. Heshmi Gwasham told me that none of the Tunisian artists had ever met an American artist, and they didn't want to lose me. I invited the Tunisian artists to come to America to demonstrate Tunisian collaborative painting. But Heshmi said that the president of Tunisia, Ben Ali, would not let them come out of the country. As I was leaving the Bouabana Cafe for the last time, one of the patrons called out, "We will never forget you." I had no idea who he was, but I felt the same way. Back home in my studio in the Velvet Mill, I could not get Tunisian collaborative painting out of my mind. When I painted with the Tunisian artists, I felt a freedom I never have when I paint by myself. And how was it possible that every single one of the paintings we did, every single one, ended up looking like the work of a single artist? In 2009, the Tunisian artists invited me back for more collaborative painting. And during my visit, Heshmi suggested I introduce Tunisian collaborative painting in America on my own. So in February of 2010, I conducted the first session of Tunisian collaborative painting at Lime Academy College of Fine Arts. We had 15 artists, 5 on each easel, the 3 easels, and each of the completed paintings ended up looking like the work of a single artist. And in November, I conducted 5 days of Tunisian collaborative painting at the Art Students League in New York. 125 artists from 30 different countries created 26 paintings. And the word that each of the artists most used to describe their experience was liberating. The following month, a 26-year-old Tunisian named Mohamed Bouazi was supporting his family of 8 by selling fruit. Ben Ali's police took his fruit away and beat him up. So Bouazi poured paint thinner on himself and lit a match. Word of his fiery death spread quickly among young people, including the artists that I had worked with. And they took to the streets and risked their lives in demonstrations. After 1 month, the Jasmine Revolution came to an end when Ben Ali, the president of Tunisia for 23 years, fled the country, and the Arab Spring was born. This past November, I again conducted 5 days of Tunisian collaborative painting at the Art Students League, but the new government of Tunisia gave permission for the Tunisian artists to join me. It was very exciting and very moving. And when Ann and I picked them up at the airport and watched their incredulous faces at the sky, as the skyline of New York came into view, there's no way to describe it. Stonington friends with apartments in New York opened their homes so the artists could be their guests. It was a very special occasion. The word muse was created in antiquity to explain the unexplainable. And as I look back over my life in Stonington, unexplainable is the word that most comes to mind. Before I close and hopefully take your questions, I want to tell you about one more visit from the Stonington Muse. On a beautiful sunny morning, on Sandy Point, with the help of a boat supplied by Bob and Martha Snyder, I heard myself ask Ann Rivers to be my wife. She said yes. Thank you. If you have any questions about anything, there are a lot of interesting, well, what's happening and why people are interested in Tunisian collaborative painting. But I'm not going to put a question. Sir?
David, I read that your trip to Botswana, I had the pleasure of being there. It's fantastic. I was wondering if you've done any paintings based on that.
No. I'm trying to think of well, I've done a lot of painting. First of all, when I'm up against something that is so powerful and beautiful, I don't even think about painting. Or I do think about it and give it up immediately. I mean, we had such an experience with these animals over a period of 2 weeks that I never possibly imagined. I was petrified the whole time, by the way. We had an open car, and they say, you know, that the lions that are staring at you don't move, that you're a person. Well, people that don't know I'm a person, I got a problem with. Yeah.
When you do collaborative paintings in Africa, is it a different experience from doing collaborative paintings with American painters? Because it seems to me that the cultural things that people bring to the work that the expressive work that they do, are likely to be very different. And I'm just curious if that feels different when you...
I'm really glad you asked that question. Because Africa is Africa, but Tunisia is Tunisia.
Yeah.
Tunisia was a democracy before anybody ever heard of America. E pluribus unum, which is the motto of the United States, 1776, the idea that the sum is greater than that the final result is bigger than the sum of its parts, that was in 1776, and it came from a newspaper and so on. But the first time that E pluribus unum ever appears, that word, which is of course Latin, is in a poem by Virgil, 2,000 years ago. Not the Aeneid. It's a poem about the strength of mixing colors. And where was Virgil living when he wrote that poem? Tunisia, in Carthage. So, also, Tunisia is totally different. We're talking about Tunisia now. Just as Tunisia had the first revolution and all the others followed suit after it. But I mean, it's not nomadic. It's, and it was a city-state under Rome. So, in a sense, it's aware of democracy. And this is a totally democratic process of painting. So the answer to your question is I haven't ever painted anybody else from Africa. Although some African here, but it would be quite different because they are really... And by the way, it was also created, Tunisian collaborative painting. What happened was that in 1988, Ben Ali, who has a much longer name than Ben Ali, that's Ben Ali, he was the second dictator. Tunisia has constantly been under the thumb of somebody, Romans, Goths, Islam, and so on. There were two dictators at the end, 25 years each. And before that, it was a French protectorate. So when Ben Ali was, and of course, when you have a real dictator, which he was, artists look out. You're not only not allowed to talk, you're going to be put in prison, tortured, and sometimes shot. And that's what was going on to the generation of artists. And Heshmi, who originally was not an artist, he was a journalist, by chance met a well-known Tunisian artist who would become a vagrant, wandering. It's a very moving story that he told me. And he got the idea that he's got to protect the artists of Tunisia from this man and from this dictator. So he had the idea that artists should come together and paint together, not on the same canvas, but for safety, just paint together in one place. And that's how it started. And then one day it was the idea of painting on the same canvas. And he actually saved Tunisian art because there's a whole generation. Well, the other thing is that just as what we're doing here with these paintings, what he did originally was when he found a venue that would host a bunch of artists, he would then give them the paintings that were created. So every place I do Tunisian collaborative painting, I give the venue what we've created. But now so that's the beginning of it. In other words, I've also made, but it is a democratic procedure because, you vote.
Oh, sure.
Now, I've made it even more democratic. I have American rules, which are slightly different from the ones I told you. I had an experience at the Art Students League when all those artists were there. And it's this very beautiful young artist who was just enraptured by what she was doing. She was painting, I think she was from Taiwan, and she was painting this incredible, with everybody else, and she had this exaltation on her face. And then when I looked back a little later, she didn't look that way anymore. She was sort of downcast. And then I looked back again and she was really, something really wrong. So I asked her what's going on. She said the painting was finished. And now they're ruining it. So that's the rule of the artist who begins it, says when it's finished. But now I have my American rules. And the rule that I have is that any artist who thinks it's finished raises their hand and it's decided by vote. If you don't have a majority, you go on with it. And the other rule of I have, it's in the American Tunisian Collaborative Painting book, is that silence, absolute silence. Because they don't have silence over there. And it's if you're talking, it's a great temptation, to suddenly start saying, gee, what about more yellow there, And then that defeats the whole purpose of it. In Tunisian collaborative painting, you lose yourself in order to find yourself. That's why it's a fantastic experience, and it's unique in the history of collaborative art, because every other collaborative painting technique always knows the subject in advance. WPA murals, the Tibetan priest stand painting. So it's a tremendous learning tool, apart from what happens when you do it. And also we have a lot of groups now who want to continue painting together as a group to see what happens. So no telling, anyway, so those are the two changes. But it is a democratic, and Tunisia is a democratic country.
Thank you. I think you answered a question I didn't even ask, but that was great.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
David, what's happening next? What's next on your palette?
Oh, I'm booked up till December. I have I'm going to the school, St. Michael's School, 11-year-olds, in 2 weeks, doing that. And then I'm going on April 15th and on May the 6th to the American Islamic Congress. And you're not going to believe this, and I don't believe it either, but the American Islamic Congress was started during 9/11, or as a result of 9/11. And they have a very liberal way of talking about it, it's a very beautiful statement. So they have an incredible new center in Newbury Street in Boston. So I said so I've agreed to do it there, And I said, well, how many do you expect? She said 300. This was yesterday. She wanted to know. So we have to deal with that problem. That's a first. But the Americans, that's the kind For example, on April 15th, we have what's the name of the Moana? There's a festival. You remember the name of it?
I think it's called Mumana.
Moana. It's the Jewish festival.
It's the Moroccan Jews and
Moroccan
Muslims
Jews
come together and
other
celebrate.
people. Right. And so that's what's going to happen on April 15th. And that is, of course, what is very moving when you have people from different countries and, you know, leaving their guns home. But so then after that, I'm going to the University of California in Los Angeles, and then I'm going to Washington. The Tunisian ambassador has invited me to do it there with the back. And then, you're not going to believe this one either, but it's the Sorbonne in December. Well, the thing is that there's also a tremendous need for something like this right now. The timing is very special. We had a panel at the Art Students League, and we had some interesting professors and people talking about it, and the Fordham University specialist on the Middle East said that he thought that the Tunisian Jasmine Revolution is what sparked the occupying of Wall Street. Point being that people are kind of fed up these days with what you cannot accomplish as an individual. And they're back to trying it in groups. And that's just one aspect of it. But it's very interesting. I mean, the interest is, I had no idea that this was going to happen. It's all Stonington's fault. Stonington paintings got me there. Anything else? Oh, wait, sorry, yeah.
Is there any difference between the output of young minds as against older minds?
That's a really good question. And the answer is yes, in my opinion. Because it's like, if you watch kids, I mean really kids, and they do a thing quickly and when it has a result, when they're on their own. You notice that? And let's see, I worked with, I did it over at the Grasso Tech, with a teacher named Joyce Supples, and I had 18 and 19-year-olds, 17 and 18-year-olds. And she said she's never seen anything that interested them that much that they kept with them. So, but I mean, this is an opinion. I mean, there must be some people here. Are there any of the artists here that painted these paintings? Well, because I'd like somebody else's opinion about that. It's a really good question. My guess would be, I'll give you a real answer after the Michael School, but it has to do with patience and having a result, something to, hand in. I don't think that young people are more in a hurry. Yes, anyone else? Yeah.
Some of the people who participated, are they here? Could they just share?
That's what I was just going to see if anybody, but I don't think anybody's here. Oh, who's here? Well, Paul Janssens is here, for God's sake. Oh, no, here, look at this lady. Come on. And you can see their photographs and the paintings they did. If you look at the photographs. Louise, come on, don't be so shy. Paul. So,
The painting over there, David and Ann and Sam and I did.
what would you like to ask them?
Oh, I want to hear their feelings about the whole thing.
Speak.
I thought it was magical. I had an absolutely wonderful time. I started painting with, there were 3 of us working on a canvas, and it was an interesting process. I think we were all very respectful of each other. 2 of us professed not really being artists at all, and one person admitted that she was. And we were so discreet and careful with each other, even in our silence, that nobody would paint in the middle. And so it took a long time for us to finally to realize that painting needed something in the middle. And I would say, I don't think that my opinion is, I don't think it gelled as a piece. but we had a wonderful time. And I remember at one point painting over something I'd done, and the wife of one of the people on that same canvas went, oh, you know, because she liked what I had she liked what I'd done before I painted over it. But I wanted people to paint over, you know, so I painted over so that I was hoping somebody else would paint there. But anyway, we got a chance to do a second one, and the three of us started, and then another person came. It's like, it's another person? Oh my, you know, so okay. And at that point, I thought, well, we'd had this trouble of not knowing what to put in the middle. So I let a little of my alpha personality come out, and I just went over and I put something in the middle. And then I went back and other people did things, and we had a great time. Absolutely great.
Well,
I can't wait to do it again.
I have not made a close on this point, although I would love to talk all night about it. But this thing about painting over somebody else's work, that's what everybody remembers when you tell them the rules, right? That's all people know. I spoke to a certain group of people that you all know very well, and one gentleman in the group said, well, I'm going to go home and do this with my family, so we can paint over their work. Then another woman, a woman from Ford Foundation, who I'd met at a party, she didn't remember who I was, but she said, oh, you are the one that you can paint over anybody else's work. So I started to think about this when I got back for the first time from Tunisia. You know, what is that? Well, I suddenly realized we all paint over our own work every single day we paint. I've never done a painting when I didn't paint over my work. So that was the beginning of my understanding of something about what this is. And I'll tell you how far I've gotten, and I'm going to try and go further. But what Heshmi Gwasham did, and perhaps by accident, is that he has duplicated the creative process of the brain of a single artist in a group. Everything that is done in these rules is done by a single artist, except when you parcel it out, and that's why every painting looks like the work of a single artist. So, well, you know, there's nothing in it, that's the inevitability of it. There's more, but that was the painting over was a clue. It's what every artist does. Matisse said you make one mark on the painting, and you got to have something else to balance it right away if the process is going on. Yeah.
I'd like to add that the experience also is that no one owns the painting. So the whole subject of ownership just shifts because, you know, we're all doing it together. And you have to give up ownership of the painting and to share what is ultimately the finished decision of when it's ready, means that you have to kind of let go of a part of you that maybe wants to have something a certain way. And that's a whole freeing experience to let go of preconceptions.
Well, it's a very good point, but in spite of my Indian Veda experience with the mistakes, I'm always afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are the art. Okay? But the point is, in Tunisian collaborative painting, there are no mistakes. You cannot make a mistake because no single artist is responsible for the painting. So you're relieved of that problem. You're also relieved of, I hate to use the word ego, but you are. Nothing that you want to happen is going to happen, right? So what are you going to do? What are you doing with this? You have then an experience that is totally beyond and different from anything else. It's no longer what you want, it's what the painting wants. And that's, yeah, Louise.
I found that the paintings that I was involved with went in very different directions depending on who I was painting with. And sometimes they were much more sensitive to each other, and sometimes they were more assertive, and sometimes it was a balance between somebody very strong and somebody who was sensitive, but still it was collaborative in the end, but gone very different directions depending on the painters you're working with.
Yeah, Holly.
I'd like to comment on something that I saw in the Art Students League workshop that you had this year, and someone was asking about young painters versus old painters. And I know sometimes when we interview people, before they came, a couple of people admitted, I'm concerned I might not paint or draw as well as some of the other people in my group. And then as ends coming, it all becomes one thing. And they were relieved afterwards to say, oh, no, it wasn't an issue. But what I enjoyed most about watching the Tunisians and the Americans interact with each other in New York, the Americans, one particular group, were very focused on abstract. And Murad, which we have a picture of him, he's what, 6'2", 6'4", Tunisian man in his big, filthy overalls, is looking at these abstract works that the Americans have kind of walked away from, and he took a brush and immediately began to pull out of these abstract shapes and colors, these wonderfully sensitive figures. And at one point there's one where there's a woman kind of relaxing, and there's two little kids crawling up on her, and this one group of Americans was just, oh, how did you do that? How did you find that? And he was so great. He just calmly looked at them and said, in the best English he could, well, you know, when you're a kid and you look at the clouds, I see a dog, I see a rabbit, and I watched these women suddenly say, oh, and they went back to their painting and looked at it, and I think the paintings I saw the rest of the week were a nice shift from where it had started.
Hallie David has how many art students? How many students do you have now?
Right now, well, I teach in a school system.
Only 400, right? 400. And Hallie has been my very great helper through all of these storms. Anyway, I think we are, thank you very much.